Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I want to talk about something we all experience as we age, the shift from power and image to something far more real, vulnerability. But what happens when someone has built their entire life on the foundation of narcissism? What does aging look like when the armor of self-importance begins to crack? Aging has this funny way of peeling back layers, whether we want it to or not. It challenges our control, unravels our curated personas, and invites us into something deeper, authenticity. But for those who've spent decades prioritizing power, admiration, and control, aging isn't just a life stage, it's an existential reckoning. Here's the truth: no matter how strong the facade is, no matter how loud the applause, time comes for all of us. And what it reveals is this: the bravest among us aren't those who cling to their image, but those who let go, step into their imperfections, and embrace what it means to truly connect with others. Let me share 7 key insights about this process, lessons that apply to all of us, whether we've been caught in the web of narcissism or on the receiving end of it. Aging reveals what the mask conceals. Aging has this remarkable way of pulling us into truth. It's not gentle or subtle, it's honest and raw. For years, many of us spend our time crafting an image, a polished version of ourselves that feels safe and admired. We hide behind achievements, appearances, or even personality traits we've curated to keep the world at arm's length. But aging doesn't respect the mask. It sees right through it. When we're younger, the mask can feel like protection. It shields us from judgment, rejection, or the vulnerability of showing who we really are. But as time passes, the cracks in that mask start to show. Our energy wanes and life's challenges, illness, loss, transitions demand that we confront what lies beneath. The mask isn't sustainable forever. The first instinct might be to patch up the cracks, to double down on what worked before. But here's the thing: the cracks aren't a sign of failure, a sign of life. They're proof that we've lived, that we've been weathered by experience, that we've carried stories and scars. The cracks are an invitation to authenticity. When we resist the urge to repair the mask and instead sit with the discomfort of being exposed, we find something extraordinary. We find that what we feared others would judge, the flaws, the wrinkles, the raw emotions, is exactly what draws them closer. People don't connect with perfection. They connect with what's real. It's terrifying to let go of the mask because it's been our identity for so long. But the paradox of aging is that the very things we try to hide are the things that make us relatable and human. Vulnerability is the birthplace of connection, and the mask is the barrier to it. The mask may have served us in the past. It might have been a necessary tool to navigate the insecurities of youth or the challenges of building a life. But as we age, it becomes heavy, suffocating even, and we realize that the freedom we crave isn't found in holding it tighter, it's found in letting it go. When we release the mask, we make space for something more genuine to emerge. We allow ourselves to show up fully, without pretense. It's not about being fearless, it's about being brave enough to be seen as we are. That's where real courage lies. Aging strips away what's unnecessary. It's as though life is saying, enough pretending. It's time to be real. And while that might feel like a loss at first, it's actually a profound gift. It's an opportunity to live more fully, to love more deeply, and to connect more authentically. As we lean into this process, we discover that authenticity isn't just about being true to ourselves. It's about allowing others to truly see us. And when we do that, we give them permission to do the same. It creates a ripple effect of connection and courage. The beauty of this journey is that it's never too late to start. No matter how long we've clung to the mask, the moment we decide to let it go, we step into a new kind of freedom. It's not easy. It requires vulnerability and a willingness to face our fears, but it's worth it. Aging doesn't demand perfection, it demands presence. It calls us to stop hiding, stop performing, and start living in the fullness of who we are. It's an invitation to step into the light, cracks and all, and to embrace the truth that we are enough just as we are. When we embrace the cracks in our armor, we stop striving for something we can never achieve and start celebrating the beauty of imperfection. That's where life truly begins, not in the polished, curated version of ourselves, but in the messy, imperfect, gloriously human reality of who we are. Control becomes a double-edged sword. Control is seductive. It makes us feel powerful, capable, and safe. For much of our lives, control can feel like the glue holding everything together. We believe that if we plan enough, manage enough, and anticipate every possible outcome, we can avoid pain, failure, or uncertainty. But aging teaches us a lesson: we can't avoid. Control is an illusion. As we age, we start to realize just how little control we truly have. The body begins to change in ways we can't stop. Loved ones grow older too, and relationships shift in ways we never imagined. Careers end, roles evolve, and life throws curveballs we couldn't have predicted. Control, once our greatest weapon, becomes a double-edged sword, something we grasp at even as it cuts us. When we build our identity around control, aging can feel like a betrayal. We wonder why we can't maintain the same level of power or influence over our lives. But what if the loss of control isn't a punishment? What if it's an invitation to trust, to let go, and to embrace something even greater? The truth is, control often comes from a place of fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of being vulnerable, fear of not being enough. When we cling to control, we're trying to protect ourselves from the discomfort of uncertainty. But the irony is that control doesn't eliminate fear, it amplifies it. The tighter we grip, the more we feel it slipping through our fingers. Surrender, on the other hand, feels counterintuitive. It feels like giving up, like losing. But surrender isn't about resignation, it's about choosing courage over fear. It's about trusting that even when we can't control the outcome, we are still worthy, still resilient, and still enough. One of the most profound lessons aging teaches us is that surrender is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. It takes courage to let go of control and lean into the messiness of life. It takes bravery to face uncertainty and still show up with an open heart. When we release our need for control, we make room for something incredible: connection. Control creates distance, it keeps us in a position of power, separate from others. But when we surrender, we invite others in. We allow them to see us in our vulnerability, and in doing so, we create space for deeper relationships. Letting go of control doesn't mean we stop caring or trying. It means we stop demanding perfection and start embracing the reality of imperfection. It means we show up fully, even when we don't have all the answers, and trust that that's enough. Control might feel like safety, but it's actually a barrier to growth. When we release it, we discover new possibilities, new ways of being, and new depths of resilience. We learn that we don't have to have everything figured out to live a meaningful, fulfilling life. Aging is the ultimate teacher of this lesson. It reminds us that life is unpredictable, and that's okay. It's not about controlling the waves, it's about learning to ride them with grace and courage. As we loosen our grip on control, we begin to notice the beauty in the unexpected. We find joy in the unplanned moments, wisdom in the challenges, and connection in the shared experiences of vulnerability. Surrender isn't easy, but it's transformative. It allows us to let go of the weight we've been carrying and step into a new way of living, one that's rooted in trust, presence, and authenticity. Control might have been our armor for a time, but it's not what sustains us. What sustains us is our capacity to adapt, to connect, and to find meaning in the midst of uncertainty. When we let go of the need to control everything, we open ourselves up to the richness of life. We stop striving for perfection and start embracing the beauty of the here and now. That's where freedom lies, not in controlling every detail, but in trusting ourselves to navigate whatever comes our way. The loneliness of the false self. There's a kind of loneliness that isn't about being alone. It's the loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people, yet feeling unseen. It's the loneliness of living behind a false self-aversion of who we think we're supposed to be rather than who we truly are. Aging has a way of shining a spotlight on this loneliness, making it impossible to ignore. When we spend years crafting an image to protect ourselves or gain admiration, it's easy to mistake the attention we receive for connection. But admiration and connection are not the same. One feeds the ego, the other feeds the soul. The false self might attract attention, but it cannot create the deep, meaningful relationships that sustain us, especially as we age. The false self is often born from fear. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. We construct this polished version of ourselves to navigate the world, and for a while it might seem to work, but the cost is high. The more we live behind the mask, the more disconnected we become, not just from others, but from ourselves. As we grow older, the gaps between our false self and our true self become harder to ignore. We might find ourselves surrounded by people, but still feeling empty. Why? Because connection requires vulnerability, and the false self doesn't allow for that. It keeps us performing, proving, and pretending instead of being real. This kind of loneliness is profound because it's not about external circumstances, it's about an internal disconnect. It's the ache of knowing that people love the version of you you've shown them, but not knowing if they'd still love the real you. It's the fear that if you take off the mask, you'll lose the relationships you've built. But here's the truth. The relationships built on the false self aren't real anyway. They might offer temporary comfort, but they cannot sustain us in the long run. What sustains us is authenticity, the courage to let ourselves be seen, flaws and all, and to trust that we are worthy of love just as we are. The journey to reconnect with our true selves is not easy. It requires us to confront the parts of ourselves we've been avoiding. It asks us to examine the stories we've been telling about who we are and to rewrite them with honesty and compassion. Aging gives us the opportunity to do this work. It strips away the distractions and forces us to face what really matters. It reminds us that life is too short to live behind a facade, and while it might feel terrifying to step out from behind the mask, it's also liberating. When we begin to show up as our true selves, something incredible happens. The loneliness starts to fade. Real connection becomes possible because we're no longer hiding. We find that the people who truly matter, the ones who see us and love us for who we are, will stay. And those who don't, they were never meant to stay in the first place. Reclaiming our true selves isn't just about finding connection with others, it's about finding connection with ourselves. It's about learning to sit with our own company and feel at peace. It's about embracing our imperfections and recognizing that they are what make us human, not unlovable. The false self might have served a purpose at one time. It might have been a way to survive or cope. But as we age, we have the chance to let it go and step into something deeper. We have the chance to live authentically, even if it means risking rejection or judgment. The irony is that the very thing we fear, being rejected for who we truly are, is the thing that leads to freedom. Because when we embrace our true selves, we stop needing validation from others. We find our worth within, not in the approval or admiration of others. This is the gift of aging, the chance to shed the layers that no longer serve us and to live more fully, more honestly, and more connected to ourselves and the world around us. The false self might have kept us safe, but it also kept us lonely. The true self, though vulnerable, is where real connection and joy reside. Resentment and regret can transform if we let them. Resentment and regret often come to the surface as we age. They're like old, unwelcome house guests who show up and remind us of the things we've done or not done. We might look back on broken relationships, missed opportunities, or the ways we clung to anger and bitterness instead of choosing grace. At first glance, these emotions feel heavy, even suffocating. But what if they're not just reminders of pain? What if they're guides pointing us toward transformation? Resentment is born when we hold on to the belief that someone else is responsible for our unhappiness. It's the unspoken story of "you did this to me," or "I wouldn't feel this way if not for you." Regret, on the other hand, often comes from within, a deep ache for the things we wish we'd done differently. Together, they form a heavy weight, one that can either harden us or soften us. Here's the thing about resentment: it pretends to protect us. It whispers if you let go, you'll lose the upper hand. You'll lose your power. But the truth is, resentment doesn't protect us, it isolates us. It locks us in a prison of our own making, keeping us from healing and connection. Regret operates similarly. It convinces us that the past defines us, that the mistakes we made or the chances we didn't take are evidence of our failure. But regret, like resentment, is not inherently bad. It's what we do with it that matters. When we resist resentment and regret, they fester. They turn into bitterness and self-recrimination, eroding our relationships and our sense of self-worth. But when we face them head-on, when we're willing to sit with the discomfort and ask, what is this teaching me? They can become powerful catalysts for growth. Transformation begins with ownership. It's easy to stay stuck in blame or shame, but true freedom comes when we take responsibility for our role in the story. That doesn't mean excusing harm or minimizing pain. It means acknowledging the truth of what happened and deciding how we want to move forward. Forgiveness is often the first step, but let me be clear, forgiveness is not about letting someone else off the hook. It's about freeing ourselves from the chains of resentment. It's about saying, I choose to stop carrying this weight because it's costing me my peace. Regret, too, offers an opportunity for transformation. Instead of letting it define us, we can let it guide us. Regret is a map pointing us toward what matters most. It says, here is where you strayed from your values. Here is where you can choose differently moving forward. As we age, the time for transformation feels more urgent. We can no longer pretend we have an endless future to make amends or change course. But this urgency is a gift. It pushes us to have the hard conversations, to repair the broken relationships, and to align our lives with our deepest truths. Resentment and regret can soften us if we let them. They can teach us compassion for ourselves and for others. They remind us that we're all flawed, that we've all made mistakes, and that we all have the capacity to grow and change. It's not easy work. It requires vulnerability, the willingness to admit where we've fallen short, and to open ourselves to the possibility of rejection or failure. But it's also the most courageous work we can do. When we release resentment, we make space for love. When we transform regret, we make space for joy. These emotions, painful as they are, have the power to reshape our lives if we approach them with curiosity and courage. The past cannot be changed, but it doesn't have to define us. What defines us is how we choose to respond. Do we cling to resentment and regret, or do we use them as stepping stones to a more authentic, connected life? Aging is an invitation to let go of what no longer serves us. Resentment and regret might have been part of our story, but they don't have to be the ending. We can choose a new narrative, one rooted in grace, growth, and the kind of courage that transforms pain into purpose. This is the beauty of being human, the ability to turn even our hardest moments into opportunities for connection, healing, and transformation. Resentment and regret don't have to weigh us down. They can lift us up if we let them. The currency of admiration fades. The currency of kindness rises. When we're younger, admiration can feel like a currency, a powerful, glittering form of validation. Being admired for our looks, our achievements, or our abilities gives us a temporary sense of worth. It's a rush, isn't it? The applause, the compliments, the acknowledgement, it all feeds a part of us that craves to be seen, valued, and praised. But admiration is fleeting. It's tied to things that are fragile, impermanent, and ultimately unsustainable. Aging has a way of teaching us this truth. The things that earned admiration in our youth, physical beauty, professional success, social clout, start to shift. We see wrinkles where there was once smooth skin, and the accomplishments we used to wear like badges of honor fade into memory. The applause quiets, and what we're left with is a critical question: what's left when the admiration is gone? This question can feel uncomfortable, even painful. If we've built our sense of worth on being admired, then aging can feel like losing everything. But the discomfort also holds a profound truth. Admiration was never the thing that truly mattered. It was never the thing that sustained us. It's a counterfeit currency, one that looks valuable on the surface but holds no lasting weight. Kindness, on the other hand, is timeless. It doesn't fade with age, nor does it depend on external achievements. Kindness is about who we are, not what we've done. It's about how we show up in the world, how we treat others, and how we allow ourselves to be seen not as perfect, but as real. The currency of kindness becomes increasingly valuable as we age because it speaks to what really matters: connection, compassion, and love. Unlike admiration, kindness does seek to elevate one person above another. It doesn't rely on power dynamics or competition. Instead, it invites us into a shared humanity, a space where vulnerability is not a weakness but a bridge. Kindness asks us to shift our focus. Instead of chasing validation, we're called to cultivate relationships. Instead of seeking to impress, we're invited to empathize. Kindness says your worth is not in how many people admire you, but in how many people feel safe, seen, and loved in your presence. What's fascinating is that the more we lean into kindness, the more fulfilled we feel. It doesn't demand the same exhausting performance that admiration does. It's not about proving or striving. It's about showing up with an open heart. And here's the paradox. The more we embrace kindness, the more magnetic we become. People are drawn not to the facade, but to the authenticity and warmth that kindness radiates. Kindness is also deeply tied to how we treat ourselves. As the applause fades, we must ask ourselves, can I be kind to the person I see in the mirror? Can I let go of the need to impress and instead offer myself grace? The relationship we have with ourselves sets the tone for every other relationship in our lives. Aging is a masterclass in this kind of self-compassion. It invites us to stop clinging to the external and start nurturing the internal. It asks us to shift from performing to being, from seeking to offering, and in doing so, it frees us from the exhausting cycle of needing to be admired to feel worthy. When we let go of the need for admiration, we begin to see the world differently. We stop viewing people as competitors or audiences and start seeing them as fellow travelers on this messy, beautiful journey of life. Kindness becomes not just a value, but a way of being. It's how we navigate relationships, how we approach challenges, and how we make sense of the world. This shift from admiration to kindness is a gift of aging. It allows us to move from a life of striving to a life of meaning. It reminds us that our legacy isn't in how many people applauded us, but in how many people felt loved and cared for because of us. Kindness is not about grand gestures or public displays. It's in the small, quiet moments, the listening ear, the thoughtful gesture, the willingness to be present. These are the things people remember. These are the things that last. The currency of kindness transcends time. It's not tied to youth, beauty, or achievement. It grows richer with age as we gain the wisdom and perspective to see what truly matters. And the best part, kindness is limitless. The more we give it, the more it grows. The shift from admiration to kindness is not just a personal transformation, it's a cultural one. When we choose kindness, we challenge the systems that tell us our worth is tied to our productivity, appearance, or accolades. We create a world where connection, compassion, and love are the measures of success. Aging gives us the chance to make this shift. It gives us the chance to let go of the shallow currency of admiration and embrace the deep, enduring value of kindness. And in doing so, we not only transform ourselves, but also the world around us. Fragility meets wisdom, the paradox of aging. Aging is a paradox. On one hand, it brings a sense of fragility, a deeper awareness of the limitations of our bodies, the impermanence of life, and the inevitability of change. On the other hand, it gifts us with wisdom, an ability to see the bigger picture and make peace with things that once felt unbearable. This meeting of fragility and wisdom is one of the most profound aspects of growing older. It's not about one overpowering the other, it's about learning to hold both at the same time. Fragility is a truth we can't escape. As we age, we feel it in our bones, in our energy, in our capacity to bounce back from challenges. The illusion of invincibility that accompanies youth begins to fade, replaced by an awareness that our time here is finite. For many, this realization feels terrifying at first. It forces us to confront the vulnerability we've spent years trying to outrun. But here's where wisdom steps in. Wisdom reminds us that fragility is not a weakness. It's not something to fear or resist. Instead, it's a teacher, a guide that invites us to slow down, to appreciate the beauty of what's fleeting, and to live with intention. Fragility brings us face to face with our humanity, and in doing so, it deepens our capacity for empathy and connection. When we resist fragility, when we try to pretend we're still as strong, fast, or untouchable as we once were, we deny ourselves the growth that comes with accepting change. We waste energy clinging to the past instead of embracing the present. But when we lean into fragility, when we allow ourselves to feel its weight, we open the door to wisdom. Wisdom is the ability to see life not as a series of wins and losses, but as a journey of learning and growth. It's the voice that says, "'Tis too shall pass," whether we're in the depths of despair or the height of joy. Wisdom teaches us to value what truly matters, relationships, purpose, and the small moments of beauty that make life meaningful.